You were a natural choice for this podcast because of all the times you've picked yourself up, you've dusted yourself off, and you've started all over again.
I lost my brother. I just remember a voice saying, "You've got to come to the hospital now." And as soon as they walked through, I knew. And I grabbed him, and I could tell he wasn't in there. He was cold. It was the worst moment of my life.
Do you know what, Andy? How lovely we're still feeling the hole that Sean left.
The people we lose are stardust, and they live in us. Grief will never go away, but you'll find somewhere to keep it.
But it did hit you hard.
The pain of losing Sean turned into me compulsively eating. I could not stop. Someone took me to see a doctor, and he said, "You've got a compulsive eating disorder."
Were you scared of getting better?
Not allowing fear to be the thing that stops you from doing things is very important. Even if it terrifies you, do it. In fact, the more it terrifies you, the more you should do it.
This is what I love about you. Hi, I'm so excited about today because I am talking to Andi Oliver. She is a really, really old friend of mine. I've known her for about 40 years, and we are going to be talking through her incredible life, where she has pivoted and begun again time after time after time. She's amazing. If you like this episode, if it would be all right, can you just click like, which is really easy and quick to do, and subscribe. Lots of people think in some way subscribing, especially if you're one of my fans and you're in a midlifer, we think subscribing means it's going to cost you money. It doesn't cost you any money. It's completely free. But subscribing just means that you get the latest episode the minute it comes out. So subscribing is great for you, and it's really great for us. I quickly just want to add a little trigger warning, because we do discuss suicide ideation and also eating disorders. I feel like at the beginning of this chat I should do some sort of like government health warning, because
Trigger warning.
I'm trigger warning because I know you, and so it's going to feel maybe and sound quite familiar to people because I know you. But what I am going to try and do is ask you lots of questions that I might know the answer to, but I know that the answer is what people will want to hear. And I am going to try to also be conscious of remembering that people don't know us or everything that we've been through. So I might explain things a bit sometimes.
Good. And I wonder, I don't know if people know that we know each other.
No, I'm not sure that everybody does.
I think sometimes they do. I'm not sure they know that we know each other as we do.
And how long we've known each other.
And how deeply connected.
Yes.
We are.
So shall we start?
Yes, please.
What are your first memories then of us meeting?
Interesting. Like WAG Club.
That's exactly what I said earlier.
The WAG Club. You being this like teenager, essentially. I mean, I was probably almost a teenager, I would imagine. I don't even know, because I don't think I had. Dad, I had Miquita by then?
I'm not even sure you had. I was very young.
You were
15,
very young.
16.
I can't. If I had Miquita, she can't have been more than about 1 or 2 years old, right? So I would have been 20, 21, which means you were probably about like in your late teens or something. Right? How old are you now?
Late teens, 57.
Yes, so you would, and I'm 61. So, you know, you might have been like 18 or 17. I may have been just before I had Miquita. I may have been 19 or something. Anyway, you were very young, tiny little skirts, legs, what enthusiasm, just this boundless, like a sort of mad puppy, very excited, incredibly happy puppy. Bounding around in the WAG Club, and I was kind of the same. Me and Neneh were very similar to that. I think we all had quite an energy that matched each other at on a really good level, in fact. And I think there were loads of boys and loads of girls, obviously, but there were some girls that were drawn to each other energetically, and you were part of that ball of kind of tumble of energy from the WAG. That's what I remember first.
That's exactly what I remember. I said earlier to somebody, I said, you and Neneh together, I was like worshipping at the altar of cool hotness. I was like, oh God, these girls are like, oh, I wanted to like absorb you in some way. And then obviously we had the connection via Bruce. So I
Yeah.
went out with a guy called Bruce Smith for ages, and he had been married to Neneh. And what was quite funny was it was like all okay for us to all be friends.
Yes,
and
because I think that there was a real... the way that we all approached life was with no rigidity.
yes.
There was no idea. There was certainly no kind of idea that it was Nana's ex-husband, so we could. I mean, we weren't children. It wasn't school. I think. I think we all felt that life came with challenges and changes, and family was quite fluid. We all came from fairly fluid familial structures anyway.
Yeah.
We were in some ways the lost ones. Who came together to make a solid base for each other. I feel that we were like sort of spiritual nomads a bit, like wandering in some kind of desert, and that we all found each other because we needed to create a
new
town,
family.
a place, a structure within which we could all live and feel like we were connected to something. And do you know what I mean? And I think that kind of happened. But that's what it feels in my gut when I think about it. I feel like we were the children of punk, and the liberation that punk gave people societally was incredibly important. And that liberation was not just about music; it was about the idea of humanity and how humanity should look, and how families should look, and how people should feel in the company of each other, and how our children should be, and what they should expect, and how we should all help and support each other. And I still believe in all of those tenets, really.
Wow. Do you know, Andy, that is probably the best description of that time for me that I've ever heard. I've often tried to explain it to people.
It's quite hard to explain to people.
It was such a special time of love and acceptance of everyone and everything in our group.
It really was.
I know outside the parameters of that group was the savage world.
Yeah,
for many.
And our world was quite savage too. Our world was also quite savage. It wasn't all sunshine and roses by any means, but I think that there was always somebody there to catch you is what I felt like. And I still feel like that, actually. I feel like I'm lucky enough to live in a world where there's always someone to catch you. Sometimes I do the catching, sometimes I'm the catcher, sometimes I'm the catchy, depending on what week it is and what day of the bloody month we're talking about. But I think that's how... It's kind of like when I was a kid, that's kind of what I wanted my world to look like without being able to really articulate that. Yeah. And then as I left home and came to London quite early on, etc. And then I remember my house at home. My house was always open house. We had it was a weird house, all sorts of quite difficult things going on, but there was always an open door policy somewhat. Like the school band that my brother was in rehearsed in our house. If anybody needed someone to stay, they would come and stay with us. If someone had a fight with their mum and dad, they would come and stay with us. My friends Sue and Louise used to spend most weekends over at our house if I wasn't at their house, but it kind of happened at ours a lot. We'd have massive sleepovers. Mum was we had a party once. I always tell people at this birthday party, it was the best. It made me and my brother kings and queens of school one year. This was when we lived in Cyprus, actually. And the birthday party was that my mum basically I think it was my brother's birthday party. So whenever we had a birthday party, you were allowed 4 friends as well. So it was me and 3 of my mates and all of my brother's mates. And my mum basically split us up into 2 armies, rolled up newspaper, blocked off the road to traffic at each end, and created these 2 kid armies and just went, go! And we battered each other with newspapers. It was just this absolute carnage in the street. The whole street was covered in ripped up paper. And then we went upstairs and had a huge picnic out in the back garden in Cyprus. Wow. And at school, we were literally kings and queens of the school because my mum she was a teacher. So she understood the child's spirit and need for chaos and would give it to us every now and again. And I think that chaos and that kind of wild thing that I used to crave as a child. I appropriate as an adult as well, actually. That spirit was something I wanted to have as part of my life. It was like, I knew that you were allowed that. And it was okay, actually. It wasn't something to be scared of, to have that kind of wild, unfettered, passionate engagement in the day or the moment or in your endeavour, whatever it is that you chose. And that's something I'm always grateful to my mum for.
You mentioned that this was happening in Cyprus.
Yes.
You actually moved there when you were really young, because your dad... Yeah, your dad was in the RAF.
That's right. So we got posted. Before that, we lived in Biggin Hill in Kent. I remember Biggin Hill quite well, actually. Like, you get like slivers of memory, like little photo snaps.
Yeah.
I remember there's 3 things I remember. One is that I used to go to school in a control tower, like an old RAF airplane control tower. So it was completely round. And I used to go up these circular steps, spiral circuits to get to the school, which was my classroom, which was on the top. And I loved it up there because you could see all the way around. So it was lovely. And then I remember walking home from school with the sun dappling through the leaves of a tree and just really like watching the light play against my skin as I walked through the... It's still one of my favourite things in the world. When you drive through it in the summertime. I love the English summertime countryside. I just want the smell of the grass, that verdant, deep green, and all of it. I think it comes from being a kid in Kent, that idyllic kind of bucolic idea of British countryside. I loved it so much.
The Garden of England.
I remember going swimming and having saveloys. That's what I remember about Kent. It's really weird. And then we went to live in Cyprus, and I got to Cyprus and I loved it there.
Why?
It was hot for a start. I didn't know I liked the sunshine. I got there and I was like, what is this? That's better. This is way better. And we went to the beach every weekend. And we used to go to school. We used to start school really, really, really early, like 7 a.m. So we'd get up at like 5:30 in the morning or something. We'd get to school at 6:30, 7 in the morning. But you'd finish at 12 in the summer and 1 in the winter.
Wow.
So you'd have the whole day. I think our holidays were shorter or something. But you'd have the whole day to do stuff. So we were very physical there. We were outside a lot. We were doing things all the time. There was a kind of swimming. I swam all the time, like in the sea, in the pool. We lived opposite like a rec centre place. To go to swimming all the time. I was obsessed with it. And there was just something about running around in the sunshine, being outside, that kind of living really worked for my temperament.
Can I ask you something? Because obviously the whole premise of this podcast is about beginning again, and it's like really moving country at such a young age is like your first experience of beginning again. That transition, did it teach you, do you feel like there are lessons that you learned from moving from Kent to Cyprus?
I think the lessons I learned were when I came back.
Right.
Because that was a happy transition and it was easy.
To Cyprus?
Yes. Coming back from Cyprus to the UK was really hard.
Right.
For a start, I didn't really remember it here very much. And I kept saying, I want to go home, meaning Cyprus. And everybody was going, you are home. And I was like, I don't understand.
How old were you when you came back?
9.
Okay.
And it just felt dark and cold.
Yeah.
People were calling me names. I experienced racism.
You'd never experienced it before?
I don't think so. Not memorably. I had a teacher that used to call me "you people" when I was in Cyprus, and I didn't really know what she meant. And this weird woman called Miss Scotford, and I just used to think, what does she mean? She kept saying that, and I didn't really know what she meant. And then I came back to England, and there was slurs, like horrible things that felt violent.
Where did you move to when you came back?
What was it? Bryce Norton we came to, and we came to London briefly, and then we went to Suffolk.
Oh, right.
It was East Anglia, Bury St Edmunds in the 70s.
Right.
And that was no joke. And, that parts of the UK back then, in that time, it was bleak. I go to Bury St Edmunds now, it's a completely different place. There's people from all over the world there. I was the only black girl in my school. It was really bleak. People were calling me names. I felt scared. I started having nightmares. I thought there was something under the bed. All of those kind of creepy... I remember seeing a film of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, a really old black and white one with Charles Lawton. It's a really old one. And I watched it, scared the bejesus out of me. And I started to have nightmare, like proper nightmares, waking up, sweating, absolutely terrified. And every single night I was having these horrible dreams. And the light, I remember the most was the light. It was the darkness.
Yes.
I found really difficult. And that darkness somehow seeped into my very being. So that was really the first difficult transition in my life, I think. We all have them at different points, but it was traumatic.
How did you cope? Because I know you didn't really tell your parents
I didn't
about
tell anyone.
The racism, or
I didn't tell anyone and I keep thinking about why I didn't tell them, because it didn't even occur to me really until quite recently that I hadn't even spoken to anyone about it. And I think a bit of me wanted to protect them. I didn't want them to know it was so hard, because I didn't really think there was anything that anybody could do about it. It felt like a monster that had been unleashed that nobody could control or do anything about, because I think somewhere in me, I felt I deserved it.
Wait.
Yeah.
I want to unpick that some.
I feel like, I think I felt like they were right. You know, I know. That's the most insidious thing about racism is that you believe it. And so what you're left with is an internal belief that you are inherently wrong, that there's something just wrong with the very core of who you are and your being. And that went in really early, and I didn't know how to shift that. And I think that's why I didn't tell anyone about it, because it felt like I would then have to talk about what was wrong with me. I know.
I guess I've kind of, I've always understood how hateful judging somebody in any way really is. I mean, I always say, for me, because I've messed up so many times, like I can't judge anybody about anything.
Quite.
Ever, right? Like,
same way. Same. I know what you mean.
But I'd never thought of it, that calling someone a name or doing that would make them question, like them believe that is what...
It felt like the veil had dropped, and I suddenly realized that there was something really wrong with me, that I just wasn't what you're meant to be, wasn't what you're meant to be, who you're meant to be, and everything about me was inherently wrong. So I could never talk about it to anyone. I talked to my friend Sue about it, who is still my dear friend. I've known her since I was 9. When I started my school, Wesley Middle School, Sue had been there for maybe 2 months, so she was the new girl as well. And then we discovered her birthday was the day before mine.
Oh, wow.
So she's the 25th of May and I'm 26th. And we sort of, when you're little, that kind of stuff's really magical and important. It's still nice now. So I would talk to Sue about it, and I would talk to Louise about it, because we just were like 3 little acorns, But I didn't really talk to anybody else, but I certainly didn't talk to any grown-ups about it.
Wow. So how did you manage? Because it was quite a long time, really, before you left and went to London. Mm-hmm. How did you manage those years of your life?
I don't know, Davina. I just was like a high-functioning, terrified person. I was terrified all the time, and like battling with a kind of self-disgust all the time. Whilst trying to grow up, and learn stuff at school,
and puberty,
and all of that stuff. So in the midst of that, there was a constant internal dialogue going on and on and on.
Were you like, I am gonna escape?
I'm out of here. Yeah. I was waiting for my life to start. I've said that before. It's like I just spent the whole time waiting for other ways that my life could take shape. I didn't have to be resigned to staying there.
Yes.
Being called disgusting things all the time. I was like overtly sexualized by adult men, at a very young age, like
really?
Walking down the road saying weird jungle bunny sex things to me. I was like 12. I had, I matured very early. I had boobs and a bum and all of that. And I'd walk down the road and grown men would be propositioning me sexually. And I didn't really even understand what they meant, but I knew it scared me. You know, I'd be walking home from school, like literally going mental. My mate's dad, like just awful, terrifying things. Like now I know if there was a young girl I knew that was going through that, I would be just gather her up and take her to safety. But, you know, my mum didn't know what was happening. My dad didn't know what was happening. My dad was bipolar anyway, and there was all sorts of stuff going on with him. My mum was not aware it was going on. Like, I've talked to her about it since, and she's like, my God, can't believe I didn't know. She's like, why didn't you tell me? I still don't really have an answer for her, you know.
Is it that you are a fiercely independent person, and it's like, it's just happening. I just got to handle it.
That was definitely a part of it. Definitely a part of it. And my mother taught me to be a fiercely independent person.
Right.
And to power through things, you know. So, you know, my mum taught me how to respond physically to protect myself if a man tried to touch me or grab me when I was 11 years old. She was like, you know, she taught me, she said, let them come close, let them come. So you grab them by the balls first, and when they come down, like, you grab them by the ears, and you pull your knee up, and then you run. And she taught me that when I was 11, and she herself was taught how to fight back against racists when she first came to this country. She was really young. She was early 20s, and somebody taught her that you run to a house there were loads of little streets then, and everybody had milk bottles outside their house. So you run a house, run up the path, grab the milk bottles, smash them against the door, keep your back to the door, and then you hold the bottles here. And then anybody coming at you, you have a weapon. And she had to learn that when she was a young girl, and she just got to this country. So she taught me how to fight. She taught me to be a fighter. She taught me to verbally know how to protect myself. I'm quite dexterous with language, you know.
You are very dexterous with language.
And she taught me that very young.
Where was your grandmother at this time? Because I know you were super close to her.
No, but the thing about Mama is I only met Mama 2 or 3 times in my life.
Oh, really?
She was in Canada or she was in Antigua. We didn't ever have the money to go. But she had this thing where she would send me messages from Canada. She understood me. Because people in my family were always talking about, I was, you know, fairly lively. And so she was always getting messages about me and my behaviour. And she would send me messages going, don't listen to them. Do what you like, basically.
Really?
From Toronto and from Antigua. She'd send me little dolls and send me messages saying, be true to yourself, be your own guide, listen to your internal voice, live with your heart, follow your heart.
How much did that mean to you?
Everything.
And did you get that?
Absolutely, because I also got the same messages from my mother, even though I was always in trouble. She was also always going, listen to your heart, lead with your heart, listen to your internal voice, because you know what's right and what's wrong.
I'm so into that at the moment.
Yeah.
Ask yourself the question, and you will hear the answer.
My gut has every single time in my life told me which way to go. Every time I don't listen to it, I end up in the shit.
Yes.
Whether it's a job, whether it's a boyfriend, whether it's a mate, whether it's a party, you know. Every time I go, and brush it away, it's absolutely the wrong thing to do.
I read. Well, first of all, I want to say what was lovely about doing this interview was I got notes about you. Hilarious. I was like, I know Andi. But what was so funny was I was reading the notes. I was like, what? I didn't know that.
Really?
Well, I guess I met you. You were like late teens, early 20s. Yeah. And pre that, we just used to talk about what was happening. I never really went deep into your past or anything. No. I didn't realise how old you were when you came to London.
Right.
And am I right in saying you were 16?
Yes, 17.
16, 17.
Yeah.
Which I really like talking about this nowadays because when you think about, I'm never sure what this generation of young people is called, Z, X,
I don't know.
Z, whatever. Young people now.
Yeah.
The idea of leaving home and moving to London at 16 or 17 is so alien. Yeah. And as a parent, helicopter parenting, you wouldn't let your kid do that. You'd be like, there's no way you're going to the big smoke on your own. And then I saw that you'd moved into a squat with some friends. Everybody was in squats
Everybody
back
was
then.
in a squat with their friends. It was perfectly normal thing to do. So what everybody did was my cousins had a squat and I moved into it.
Best thing ever. Like, can you just explain to people what a squat was? Because there's just no such thing.
A squat was a house. That was free, basically, because you basically took over abandoned properties or empty properties. And London then, there were loads of empty houses all over the place that people weren't living in. So you would move in. People used to I don't even know how they got the electricity on. You'd kind of get an electricity meter, or they'd plumb into some weird thing, stick a pin in it and do it. There was gas on, there was electricity on. Once you had the gas and electricity on, you were good to go, basically. Yeah. Some of them didn't have the electricity on and were a bit cold. They were misery squats. We didn't really have a misery squat. We had nice squats.
They were good.
And then you'd have squatters' rights, and there was all sorts of things. And then a lot of those squats became what used to be called co-op houses. And they were like small housing co-operations that were put together by an independent group of people. And then you would legally actually take ownership of those houses. Unfortunately, they got turned into housing associations, which then the council bought, and then they just became part of the
council,
the whatever they call it, government property government housing stock. So unfortunately, those co-ops kind of didn't last that long, but for the period of time, it was fantastic because how young people now can't afford to leave home. We just left home and found ourselves living independently. It was absolutely brilliant.
How many of you were there in the squat?
1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 8 in a great big house, in like a sort of 5-floor house in the back of Dalston near Canonbury kind of thing. That was the first. I've lived in a few. Everybody lived in a few, It was a very free time. It was that was another transition, I suppose.
Beginning again by moving to London was massive.
But I literally was chomping at the bit. I could not wait. And the moment I turned 16, I was like, right, I'm legally allowed to go now. I mean, you were saying, parents allowing, and there was no allowing or not allowing. I was just gone. I used to climb out the back window and run away all the time. My poor mother, honestly, it's just, I was a nightmare. I acknowledge that.
But can I just say something? Look at you now.
I know.
And all of that, I think sometimes it's quite nice to say to any parents listening or watching that your kid might be going through a lot of trauma, turmoil now.
And seem quite lost.
And seem a bit lost. But actually, this is what makes someone.
Yeah, and sometimes that's happening because they've got a lot to offer. They've got a lot going on and they can't wait to start life.
Yeah.
And sometimes, Neneh always says, not everybody's good at being little. Like, she used to say it about Miquita. She was like, Miquita's just not very good at being little. And Miquita was terrible at being little. Miquita was like, she was quite wild. Not very good at being little. I'm not very good with, automatic authority has never sat easily with me or particularly well with me. I remember being at school, and my teacher would say, because I say so. And I'd think, yeah, but you're an idiot. I'd have no respect for you, so why would I do what you're telling me to do? It's like my Uncle John. Have you met my Uncle John?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've met my Uncle John.
He was one of the first. Was he at your 60th?
Yes, he was. And he was one of the first black headmasters in this country, my Uncle John. He's an extraordinary man. And my Uncle John would tell me to do something, but he would sit me down and explain to me what was going on and why I needed to do something differently. And I would always do it.
And do you know why?
Because he had respect for me.
I was just going to say, respect.
Yeah. And he was always treating me like that since I was little. He would sit down and ask me how I was, what I thought about it, and understand what having a conversation and a proper exchange with me. And I just always needed that. I don't respond to someone just barking orders at me and telling me what to do. I've not been very good at it.
I love that idea that some people aren't good at being little.
Some people need to be out in the world. And I think if it scares you, I think you just have to make sure they know there's a safe place for them to come and land when they need it. And
you always
trying to keep them home, it doesn't help. It doesn't mean that they're not going to go out and do things that scare you or that challenge them. It just means that they're going to get resentful with you.
Yeah.
So even if it scares you, how your child is, even if it scares you, you still have to let them do the things that they're reaching for. You know, if they want to go to Paris for a year or they want to do whatever it is, you've got to let them get on with it. Because you don't own them.
What did you do when you came to London? Because was that when music was like, okay?
Yeah, for a bit, I think. I mean, it wasn't that long before I joined Ripping and Panic, I've got to say, which was the band I was in when I was a teenager.
I've just got to say, we've got to just like stop for a moment and discuss Ripping and Panic, because it was the coolest band ever. Because it was sort of like, it's talked about like it's a punk band, and the ethos and the vibe of it was punk, but there was also so much
jazz and
groove, like funk, like
and everything.
They were amazing. You were amazing.
We were really like a collective.
Yeah.
More than just a band. It was
quite a collective.
Yeah, it was a collective. It was like lots of different moving cogs.
And people would come and go and guest them.
And at the heart of it, there was like 6 of us, I suppose. It was sort of Gareth and Sean, Bruce, me, Neneh, Springer. And then there was Flash and all sorts of other people that would come and go, basically, around that kind of nucleus. And I
mean, you were pretty big.
Yeah, like, so. I mean, I don't really, we never really thought about that stuff, which is quite interesting, which is probably why we weren't bigger, because we didn't really think in music business terms, and we didn't really, the music business per se was not really the reason we were doing any of it. It was very much a need to express ourselves in a particular way. And for me, I'm eternally grateful. I see it as that Gareth, who really was the founder of the band, was like my music teacher, and to have had that musical education at such a young age was brilliant, because it taught me, me and Neneh were like sort of dervishes on the stage, really. We just used to
gorgeous.
Fly.
So honestly, I wish I could like explain to people, because both of you brought a little bit of like kind of African dance moves, like vibe, and I'd never seen girls like dancing perform. Yeah, I was like, this is the sexiest thing I've ever seen in my life. I was telling
somebody about this the other day, and I was like, well, we just used to we never used to wear shoes, and we used to tuck our dress into our knickers,
into your sides. Yeah, it was so cool.
Tuck everything into our knickers and just fly about, basically. I saw these pictures the other day and I was thinking, well, that's a lot of panties. Just like, it's just loads of pictures of me and Neneh's bum, basically.
Amazing.
And for us, it felt, as these 2 young women, we were like any other young women in that we were trying to work out who we were, and parts of us were very confident and fearless and felt really powerful, and bits of us were really insecure and freaked out,
What was that like when you met Neneh?
It was kind of like 2 magnets, really. So Sean had a car crash. Sean and Gareth had a car crash, and Sean was in hospital at the Middlesex Hospital, I think it was.
So how old were you when you met Neneh?
She was 17, I was 18. Or she was 16 and I was 17, like literally babies. And Sean had been telling her about me, and he'd been telling me about her. He kept going, you've got to meet this girl. You're going to love each other. You're going to love her. You're going to love her. And I was like, whatever. Sort of sleeping with
when someone else is telling you as well, you're like,
whatever, shut up. And I walked into the hotel, I keep calling it the hotel room. I walked into the hospital room, and she'd go to and read him from this book every day, because he had his leg in a what do they call that?
A cast.
Traction.
Yes.
It was in traction, so he couldn't get out of bed for about 3 months. So she used to go and read to him every day out this book and talk to him and plait her hair, basically. And I came down, so I probably was 17, because it was just
moving
as I was
to
moving
London.
to London. I was just moving, and I walked in, and she was sitting there. We kind of looked at her and went, "Hi." And I was thinking, "Oh, you must be that girl." She said she was thinking, "Oh, you're the sister." And we talked a little bit, and then I said, "Do you want a fag?" I don't even smoke. Neither does she. We must have been Sean cigarettes. Got a cigarette. Went in the hallway. This is how long ago it was. Went in the hallway of the hospital and had a fag.
Love it.
And just were like, "Oh, you're pretty cool. You're pretty cool." And we came back in, and I think Gareth was there as well. And we said, "So we're going to sing together." And they were like, "What?" And then we said, we decided we're going to sing together. And we were like, arms linked. Do you know, like when little girls fall in love with each other?
Me and Sarah.
Yes. It's exactly what happened.
It's exactly what happened. I just knew.
Yeah,
immediately.
You just know. When you know, you know.
Yeah.
All very When Harry Met Sally. And we fell in love with each other on the spot. I always say Neneh's one of my greatest love affairs in my life, really.
One of your most successful.
Most successful.
Look, still going.
Easier than any dude.
Yeah. Right?
And more consistently, easy than any man.
And I think girlfriends, and I'm pretty sure Neneh would have done this to you as well. Sarah's definitely done it to me. They can tell you things that no one else can tell
absolutely.
you because they love you.
Yeah.
And that love is so pure that they can tell you some of the hardest truths.
Neneh has definitely been tasked with speaking to me. Like, now listen.
Yeah.
So-and-so is pissed off with you.
They've sent me.
This is why. And I'm like, why don't you talk to me yourself? And they're like, because she's scared of you. I'm like, dick. And she's like, yeah, what are we going to do about it? Do you know what I mean? It's like and I've done the same with her because people don't want to tell her anything, I remember when she'd first became hugely famous on her own. And she'd been on tour, and I missed her so much. She'd been away because we were like in each other's pockets every day.
Every day, right?
Never did anything without each other ever.
I mean, you had an N in between your names.
Yeah, Andi Neneh.
Yeah.
It's true.
Right?
It's true, we did. It was, and people very rarely said that one name without
Never.
the other name. Andi and
Never.
Neneh and Andi coming, exactly. And she'd been away for like 3 months or something, and she came back, and we were in our house, and we were doing something, cooking probably, and she said something, I went, oh, shut up. And she started laughing, and I said, why are you laughing? She went, no one's told me to shut up in 3 months. Because she'd been with all these like kiss asses. And I was like, oh, what a load of shit, shut up. And she just started laughing. She went, oh, God, I miss you so much.
Oh,
everyone's
that's
been
so
kissing
nice.
my ass for 3 months, And so, yeah, you are the one who can say, you are the one with who is safe.
Yeah.
She's my safe person, she's my person. And that happened really quickly. So we fell in love with each other, decided we were going to sing together. About 2 months later, the Slits were playing at a place called The Venue.
So let's just explain
Victoria.
the Slits.
The Slits were
coolest band ever. So Sean's girlfriend Tessa played bass.
Played bass in the Slits.
In the Slits.
So it's all very family, all this stuff.
All interlinked.
Yeah, and Neneh was singing with the Slits, and I went to this gig, and I was down the front, because I was a massive Slits fan before I'd even met any of them. Slits played in Bury St Edmunds when I was really young, and punk changed my life. The Clash and the Slits played, and I was like, that's it, I'm living like that. Which is one of the things that brought me to London, was the idea of the Clash and the Slits. And so I went to this gig, I was like, oh, I love the Slits. Oh, that girl I met singing with the Slits. I don't know if Sean was playing with them that night. I can't remember. He used to play with them sometimes. Bruce may have been playing drums with them too, because Bruce, who was the drummer in Reunite Panic, also played with the Slits. And at the end of the gig, Neneh and Ari reached down and pulled me up onto the stage. And I think it was Grapevine or whatever it was they were singing. And they just get on the mic and shoved me at the mic. And then we all just started dancing. And, it was like, I just was like, this is right. This is what I'm meant to be doing. It didn't feel weird. It didn't feel scary. I was just in my shit. I was and I felt like I'd finally landed where I was meant to be. Did this kind of crazy couple of last songs with them, did the encore with them. And at the end of the gig, Gareth from Rediscovering Panic, who was the founder of Rediscovering Panic, said, do you want to come on tour with us? And a month later, I was on tour with Neneh and the rest of the band, and that's how I started singing.
Do you know what I felt from what you just said? Again, it was an era where nowadays, I think, everything is kind of so calculated.
Yes.
Everybody's got their band. They wouldn't really want to share that with somebody.
No, they would never go, get up on the stage. No.
And sometimes, I guess it's what I've missed not doing so much live television, is when the anarchy can happen.
Yes.
And you go off script and you run over there and something happens.
And they just gotta follow you.
And I think that's punk.
Yes, it is.
Punk is, you think this is going to happen, but we can make anything can happen.
It's the moment, the frisson, the electricity of the moment, the energy of the moment is what drives what's happening in front of your eyes, whether it's TV or on a stage or in a play or whatever it is. You go with what feels right in that second and in that moment. And that's a brilliant recipe for life, in my opinion. That's why I like live TV. I love live TV. You love it, don't you?
Love it.
Lots of people don't like it.
Yeah, I love it.
Because they don't like the uncertainty. I love that.
Yeah, but that's because we're from our era.
That's because we're from what we're from.
Yeah.
So that's how I started singing.
But what, I mean, Andi, the reason why you were top tier begin again guest is because you've just done it so many times. Like the singing, you know, that you kind of got dragged onto a stage. And then you're in a band and you're going on tour. But the funniest thing for me was hearing that you didn't really think about it in terms of music industry or career or anything like that. It was just a release.
It was more like, I like these people.
Yes.
I'm going to do this with these people. That was kind of why it was happening. It was like just because we all needed to be together and do this thing together, and had the most incredible time. I mean, what a way to spend your young life, basically, with your mates on the road, performing these wild gigs that were different every single night.
Yeah.
The first gig I ever played actually was at the venue again. It was in the same place. And I wore my mum's bedroom curtain. It was a good curtain. It was a really good curtain. It was like maroon. I saw a picture then. I thought, is that the curtain? It was like a dark maroon burgundy, and it was like damask. So it had sort of gold inlay, and it was the fanciest thing I could see. I thought, I'm going to wear that. And I just wrapped it around myself and tied it and pinned it with a giant pin in the back.
But I'm telling you, I knew you then. It would have looked amazing.
It looked great.
Right?
It looked great. It was, people were like, what do you mean a curtain? I'm like, yeah. So that was the first thing. Neneh and I just used to wear bits of fabric wrapped around us all the time. I mean, that's kind of how we dressed, like knotted here and there and on our heads and anywhere else, basically.
I mean, again, punk. Not doing what you think.
So what are you going to wear? That thing up there, pass it to me.
Not conforming.
Yeah, carrot bag. I had a carrot bag dress once. That was a good dress. We just cut the
carrot
corners.
Bag?
It was like a bag that carrots came in. You know those mesh bags?
Yes.
And I just cut the corners off and put a hole in the neck, and it was fabulous.
Amazing.
You'd have loved it.
Quite see-through.
Yes,
very me.
Totally net dress. Basically.
Amazing.
You'd have loved it, mate.
Yeah.
Little short, just about covered the bum, and wore that with like pink winkle pickers. It was a look. I
mean, this is what I love. It's just like always thinking,
and
moving.
I think that actually has served as a really strong bedrock for life, actually. So that, in fact, when big change happens, when things are, feel like they're perhaps being thrust upon you, it doesn't really... I mean, there have been times where I've been, scared and worried, but a lot of the time I'm like, So what do? You have to kind of almost take a deep breath and find a calm center in yourself and work out which way you want to turn. It can be the moment of opportunity. I don't know if it's in Mandarin, in a Chinese language, crisis and opportunity are the same word. Wow. It's cool, that, isn't it?
It's very cool.
It's very cool, because the thing that you think is going to be the worst possible thing, the thing that's terrifying you because it means you have to deviate from your plan, can sometimes mean that you let in whole brand new thoughts and ideas and people and situations that you would never normally have considered. And what you can consider is not always enough or the right thing, because you don't really know what the possibilities are yet. So I think being open to that crisis moment is actually being open to exciting, unimaginable change. And that's kind of the change you want, is what is unimaginable. That's what excites me about being alive. It's like all the stuff I can't even possibly contemplate yet because I don't even know what it is. That's what I want.
I mean, I'm just really looking forward to the next beginning again. Like you're like a shapeshifter. It's just so exciting to see what you're going to do next, and that you're open to it. I'm excited because I'm going to introduce you to my new show sponsor, Ancient and Brave. I love a secret weapon. Well, this isn't really a secret because I've been banging on about it for years. It's collagen, and more specifically, Ancient and Brave True Collagen. It's been part of my routine for years, and it's completely tasteless, odourless, and dissolves in anything. Coffee, tea, smoothies, even just water. But this is why I swear by it. Collagen levels naturally decline as we get older. I know, it's so unfair. And that basically affects everything: skin, hair, joints, muscles, you name it. But True Collagen helps keep everything strong, supported and glowing. But what really sets them apart is that they're a B Corp and members of the 1% for the planet, which means that 1%, actually now 2%, of all their sales goes directly to environmental causes that protect our planet. So if you fancy giving it a go, here's a little secret for you. Get 20% off your first order at ancientandbrave.earth/planet using my code BEGINAGAIN, all in one word. I do want to talk to you very quickly about, obviously Sean's back in your life at this point, you're in London.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you about sickle cell because Sean had sickle cell, and if you could just explain what that is.
So sickle cell is a blood disorder. And it means that now let me get this the right way around. I think it's the red blood cells. I get this mixed up. It's either red or the white blood cells. It are constantly changing. And what happens when you have sickle cell is that instead of them changing shape and just sort of being able to move around each other, they sickle and they get locked in different parts of your body. And that can happen in your joints, it can happen in your head, it can happen in your spleen, it can happen anywhere. And when it happens, it's incredibly, painful. Unbearably painful, beyond pain. And it's called a crisis. And sickle cell happens in people from the African diaspora. There's a version of it called thalassemia that happens to people who are of kind of Greek and Turkish, I think it's Levantine background, heritage. And Sean was a sickle cell sufferer. I'm a carrier, which means I could pass it on to a child. Well, I'm not anymore, I couldn't because I don't have a wound. But when I was of childbearing years, a child of mine could have had it if I had a baby with another sickle cell carrier. Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of stopped with me, actually, which I'm really glad about.
Did you see Sean having attacks when he was younger?
All the time.
How often?
Every couple of months at least.
What would bring it on?
Overexertion brings it on. Now, overexertion he was quite lucky because overexertion for some people can mean getting out of bed. Right. So some sickle cell people cannot get out of bed because walking across the room brings on a crisis and it's so painful that they have to get back into bed. So they have to be in a wheelchair or they can't because they just can't. They're pushing their body. It's like they just can't. So, and then their eyes go very yellow, like almost jaundiced. And it's just painful. And Sean would get massive nosebleeds. I would have to sit with him and hold a bucket under his face and it would just be pouring out. And I'd hold ice here on the bridge of his nose to try and stem the bleeding. He used to be stuck in bed. Before we had tellies in every room, he'd be stuck in bed upstairs and I'd be downstairs and he'd bang on the floor so I'd go up and see what he wanted or I'd sit with him a bit and read to him a bit. But I used to get quite impatient about it as well. And almost oddly, jealous because he'd get lots of attention. So we would fight about it as well. After he died, I felt so awful about all that stuff. And then I had to forgive myself because I was just a kid.
Yeah.
It was very tricky. And then when he was he was 18 months older than me. When he was about 12 or 13, we found out that he had a expected lifespan of 30. And we had all these pamphlets about it. Because you know how we found out he had sickle cell? So we were in Cyprus and he had a sickle cell crisis. And they thought he had appendicitis. I think we were still in Cyprus, yeah. And the doctors thought he had appendicitis, so they rushed him in to have an appendectomy. Now, when somebody has sickle cell, you can't give them general anaesthetic because it can kill them. Because the application of general anaesthetic affects the blood cells and it can bring on such a huge crisis. And they were about to give him anaesthetic and the doctor suddenly went, hang on a minute, stop. And luckily, the doctor was a white doctor, had worked in Africa for years. And he suddenly went, I'm not sure this is appendicitis. And gave Sean an examination and said, this boy's got sickle cell. So when he was about 11...
That's the universe, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are the chances of that?
What were the chances of that? So that's how we found out he had sickle cell.
Wow.
It's funny, things get a bit jumbled up in my head. I'm like, was that in Cyprus or was it when we came back? Do you get
I
that?
think,
like,
yes.
Can't place things and then I think, oh.
That is normal at our age.
Yeah.
I think it's okay, we're allowed.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is.
It is what it is. I feel like, remembering Sean, I remember him being the most laid back, chilled out, relaxed, calm. And I wonder now, you telling me that exertion brought on whether years of knowing that if I get overexcited or I do, but it made him completely unique.
Yeah.
This level of chill was so attractive
because
to me. The over
really
enthusiastic,
fast brain.
Yeah, I mean, so smart.
His brain was really, really, really fast, but he was very chill. And also, I'm his sister, so he was the opposite of me, and like physically, energetically. So I would do all the energy stuff, and he would sort of direct me from the sofa. He would get me to do the most unbelievable shit, and we would get, and I was always like, but what? You know, I was quite neurotic. What if we get in trouble? And he'd go, yeah, but we'll still have done it. Just fucking go and get the thing. Get the wine, Nick Dad's wine, you know, terrible, like naughty. He was so naughty.
He was naughty, but in a really good way.
A really unbelievably charismatic way.
I also just want to say, I don't know if it's possible on the YouTube channel that we're going to put this on, but at this point, I would love to put a really beautiful picture of Sean Oliver, please, so everybody can see
the beauty.
Sean, because, no, really, Andy... He was breathtakingly beautiful, but like his energy matched his beauty.
Yes.
Like it was just, he was incredible.
He was incredible. I mean,
difficult.
The reason I've got
I
that look
know,
on my face is because I'm just remembering how annoyed I used to get because he used to sleep with everybody.
I just want to let you know, I never had sex with Sean.
You're literally one of the only people I know.
I did happen to be sleeping with his best friend, though. That would have been bad.
May not have stopped him. Just gonna say, okay, just gonna say. But he did very much love Bruce, so it probably would have stopped him. But he was unbelievable. I mean, I would get friends and I'd go, please, can you not? Can you just not? And he'd go, and he actually said to me once, can't promise anything. And I was like, I hate you! And then, of course, he slept with her. Just to sleep with everybody. And I could tell when he'd slept with people.
Oh, no.
Because then they'd talk to him, they'd go, hi. And I'd think, oh, God, you shagged him, haven't you? You used to really piss me off. And also, my dad was a terrible philanderer. So my dad was always sleeping with people.
Right.
And I was like, oh, my God, I hate you both. You just keep it in your pants for 5 minutes, for God's sake. Have to keep sleeping with everything with a pulse. It was like a thing. And
well, it's an addiction of sorts, isn't it?
Yeah, well, no,
feeding
absolutely,
beast.
Feeding a desire. And you know, with Sean, I just think he wanted to eat up as much life as he possibly could, whether it was with sex, with music, with everything. You know, he just had this. It's interesting because he was, as you say, incredibly chilled out about everything. He just didn't have those kind of trigger points that a lot of people do. He just didn't have them, but he had an urgency about living.
But was he aware of his life expectancy? Yes. Okay.
From the age of about 12, he knew that.
Wow. Because that's really going to affect.
Also, it's massive. But in a way, also, I think that we couldn't really conceive of what it meant.
No.
Because 30 seems so far away.
Yes.
When you're 12, 30 is like some far off land, you know. But we knew that meant it was young. Mm. But it was still hard for us to get our heads around. And when he died, he was 27.
Can you tell me a bit about that night?
Worst night of my life, Davina. I was at the Globe, which was a sort of dive bar in Tavistock. No, what square is it? It was at the bottom of Powys Terrace, which is where I lived. Mm-hmm. And it was a little dive bar place that we all used to run around in. And it was the first place I ever cooked food and people paid me. Was in the Globe. Remember when I used to do all the food?
Yeah, I do.
And there was a party in upstairs. Carmen Munro, who is a black English actress, Caribbean English actress, was in there. And I love Carmen Munro. She was in there. And I every time I see her face, it reminds me of that night now. And I was in the kitchen and the phone rang. Remember, nobody had mobiles then. It's 35 years ago. Nobody had mobiles. The phone in the globe rang. And it was somebody calling me from the hospital. I still don't know who it was, actually. I don't know who called me. I can't remember. I just remember a voice saying, "You've got to come to the hospital now. Sean's sick." And I got in a cab. I don't know who was with me. I actually, I remember the phone ringing, and from the phone ringing to after Sean's funeral, it's all a very weird, surreal, hard to place, hard to put my finger on thing. It's this nebulous, weird thing. I remember odd bits of it at funny times. And I went to the hospital, and Sam was there, Sam Robinson, his girlfriend, who they were engaged to be married. He loved her so deeply. Like, Sam was the tamer. She was the lion tamer, you know. He just adored her. And Sam was there. I think Hussein was there, who was our friend, dear friend and manager, Sean's manager. I can't remember who else was there. Maybe Miranda was there actually as well, Sam's sister. Miranda might have been there. There were a few people there anyway, and he'd had a sort of stroke. And we were all out in the waiting area, and the doctors came back through, and as soon as they walked through, I knew. And they went to Sam, because she was his girlfriend, I think, and sort of sat down in front of him and said, "He's just had what do they call it? Basically, he'd had a heart attack and a stroke simultaneously, and it killed him. Because he was having a sickle cell crisis, and the whole thing was just too much for his body. The whole thing overloaded, and it killed him. And I ran past them, and he was in the bed. I'd already seen him, because I said to him, I spoke to him and I said, "Well, you're going to be home in a couple of days. When you get home, I'll make you some soup." And he was conscious. And then he went back out, and we went back out again. And he was weak. I remember that he was weak. And because he was like, because he didn't want to be there. He hated it there.
Yeah.
And he was like, "When can I come home?" And I was like, "You'll be home in a couple of days, and I'll come and I'll make you some soup." And he was like, "All right, fine." And then they came and basically said, it told us he died. And I ran back in, and I grabbed him. And I could tell he wasn't in there. Yeah. He'd gone, he'd left. And he was cold. Body wasn't, it just wasn't, it didn't have the vitality, it didn't have the soul spark in it anymore. And my mum was on the way, and she didn't get there in time. And I stood in the car park waiting for her to come. And I couldn't call her and tell her. There was no phones, so I just stood in the car park waiting for my mum to come. And she got out of the car, and she was just so hopeful. And I said, "He's gone, Mum." She just crumpled. It was the worst moment of my life. I've got tissues, I've taken them all out already. And having to tell her that he had gone, it was just her face. I'll never forget her face. And it nearly broke us, Davina. It nearly broke you. It nearly broke all of us. Because he was such a death does that to people, obviously, but Sean was a special person. And I'm sure everybody feels that about the person they lost, but Sean really was a special person.
Do you know what, Andy? I've been thinking about him a lot, obviously, because I knew I was going to talk to you today, and I thought that how lovely for Sean that it's 35 years, right?
Yeah.
35 years later,
we're
still feeling the hole that Sean left.
Yeah.
And I was in bed with Bruce. Mm-hmm. The phone rang. I picked it up. It was Neneh.
Oh, my God.
And I put the phone down, and I thought, I've got to wake you up
and tell you
and give you the worst news of your life. That your best friend, since you, I don't know how old.
They were teenagers too.
Yeah.
They were kids.
Has gone. And I was like, I don't want to wake you up. Like,
to change his life forever.
Yeah. And
It's awful.
but the beautiful thing out of that is that he made in his very short
life,
27 years, a massive impact.
You know, on his gravestone it says, "He who burns twice as bright burns half as long."
Yeah.
And there's a shooting star on his gravestone. And it's never truer. Never a truer word was spoken. And when it relates to my brother. And the further away I get from it, the more grateful I am that I had him at all.
Yes.
And the further away I get from it, I understand that life is what happens to you when you're here. And what you do with that period of time. Some people live till they're 95 and don't make any impact at all. And, there's a sadness to that, a deep sadness. And I think of Sean's funeral. Remember the funeral? There were people that you couldn't get into the crematorium. Yeah. There were people. It was a sunny day. And it was like the royal death that happened on Nabbit Grove. Yeah. The whole place went still. The hearse came up the road. There were people lined on the streets, and all around the outside of the crematorium, there's like banks, and there were like people 4 deep on the banks outside the crematorium, and that's a testament to my brother and what he did with the time that he had here. Yes. And that's a beautiful, powerful thing. And his children are incredible. His grandchildren are extraordinary. Yeah. And I get to have them and be them. And I get to be his sister forever. You know, that's the other thing. I'm like so proud that that was my brother. And that I got to have that with him, that we got to tour the world. We got to be in this incredible band together and do all this extraordinary things in this really short space of time. Yeah. You know, so as an older person, I have so much gratitude for having him at all. And I remember, I don't know if I've told you this, but I think I might have told you when you and Sarah came to do Stirring It Up with me and Miquita. Margie Clark, as an actress, she was in that film years ago, something about Letter to Brezhnev, it was called. She was the lead, and it's a brilliant Liverpudlian actor, just fantastic woman. And I met her after Sean had died. I was with Viv Goldman walking up Portobello Road, and there was a big bus there, and Margie was filming. And Margie brought us onto the bus, and Viv said, "Oh, this is Andi." And I was, she was explaining to Margie what I kept bursting into tears, and Margie said, "Andy's brother died a few weeks ago," and it was literally a couple of weeks later. And Margie sat down and she took my hands and she said, "I lost my brother 23 years ago." And I was like it was like water to a dying woman, like hearing these words, because I looked at her and I knew she understood. And she said, "It'll never go away, but you'll find somewhere to keep it." She said, "People will say lots of things to you, and you probably just want them all to fuck off." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "This is all I can give you." And it was the greatest gift anybody could ever give me. And it's turned out to be absolutely true. It's never gone away, but I found a little quiet place within, and that's where it lives. The pain of it. And every now and again it comes up like just now. And it feels very recent and real and all over again.
I mean, we were discussing before we started how mad it is that the last time I saw you, because life is just so mad, isn't it?
Yeah, we have to tell
I was on your podcast,
and it was
Stirring It Up, and it was a year ago.
To this week.
And we realised then, oh my God, it's actually the anniversary of your brother dying this week.
And we've done it again.
And we've done it again this week.
Without knowing or realising.
We just realised at the car.
Yeah, last night I laid in bed and I went, hang on, what day is it? 24th. I was like, my God, we've done it again. So this weekend it will be 35 years since Sean died.
Mad. Absolutely mad.
So that to me, see, I feel like
it's
they are
him,
stardust. They are stardust. The people we lose are stardust, and they live in us. They live all around us. I believe this really firmly. We've both lost enough people at this point in our lives. I'm not a religious person, but I do have a spiritual sense of the world that I cling to sometimes like it's a lifeboat. That sense of that which we cannot put our fingers on, that which is intangible. And That's what, again, coming back to these things about books and music. Those are the things that books and music help me to connect to, is the stuff that we cannot imagine, the stuff that's bigger than us, that's greater than us, that is outside of our control. It's nothing to do with what we decide and what we choose. It just is, you know. And after, I think, any great loss in your life, connecting to that is the thing that keeps you alive and keeps you going and keeps you inside your own body, because somehow grief makes you leave your own body. You kind of float above yourself. It took a good couple of years before I re-entered my body after Sean died. I was like hovering above for quite a long time.
I felt when my sister died, I felt like the whole world just stopped spinning. And I'd go places and I'd think, oh, the world's still spinning for you. Like, I can't move forwards.
Yeah. And
I'm
everybody's
literally
getting
stuck.
on with their lives, which they're meant to do.
Yeah, which everybody's meant to do. But it was, it's quite hard to explain that to somebody.
Yeah.
I always try to remember to check in with people who've lost someone, because it is a weird...
After the funeral, everybody goes back to getting on with their lives.
Oh, you're fine now.
Just sitting there.
Yeah.
It's a bit like having a baby, actually. It's the same thing. Like, after the baby comes, it's interesting because it's birth and death. So birth and death, after the baby comes, this monumental thing happens in your life that changes you forever. And everybody else is like really interested. Oh, lovely. Or, oh, poor you, that's a terrible nightmare. And then they have to get on with their own lives. So it's just normal. But then you're sitting there going, oh my God, now I've got a baby. What happens next? You know, or, oh my God, I've lost somebody. How am I supposed to carry on? And you find a way.
But it did hit you hard.
It hit me hard.
And
it hit me hard. It nearly broke me.
Because it developed into the trauma.
Yeah.
Basically became an eating disorder.
Really
what happened?
Severe eating disorder where I could not stop eating. And I actually connected to the feelings that we were talking about at the beginning of this, when I was talking about when racism first hit me and where it lived in me, in that I innately felt like I was wrong and disgusting. And the pain of losing Sean turned into me compulsively eating. I could not stop, like in the dark, eating anything, not, you know, making something delicious and sitting down having a snack, literally eating anything I could get my hands on, and crying, rocking in the dark, wanting to be sick, not knowing how to stop. I mean, it was just the most terrifying downward spiral. And also revolting. I've revolted myself, and I didn't know how to tell anybody what was happening. Couldn't talk about it because I was so ashamed. The shame of it was crippling to me, like absolutely awful. And so I would do it in the dark because I was even ashamed to see myself, let alone let anybody else know what was happening. And I mean, I don't still to this day, like that's, you know, we're talking about the things that we kind of control that we don't see. The universe absolutely brought the right people to me just when I was going under. I really was. And I met a woman called Sarah, who had just come out of rehab for heroin addiction. And she was talking to me about her heroin addiction. I was thinking, this sounds really familiar.
The feelings are the same, right?
Yeah. She was going, you know, and I couldn't stop, and I was degrading myself, and she'd done all sorts of terrible things, the shame of it. And I was thinking, I still didn't tell her. I was just sitting there thinking, no, and I still didn't tell her. And I was sitting there thinking, shit. And then I said, really quietly, I said, I wish you could do that for food. She said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you know. She said, no, tell me what you mean. And I said, well, it's making me choke up again. I was like, I don't know how to stop. I mean, I'm really scared. I was so scared, Mina. And she said, there, you can. And I said, what? She said, it's a thing. You have an eating disorder. And I'd never heard the words eating disorder. I just thought I was disgusting. So awful. And she took me to see a doctor called Dr. Robert Lefevre.
I know.
Who used to run a clinic called Promise. He said, tell me what's been happening. And I told him, and he said, you've got a compulsive eating disorder. And I said, I'm ill. He was like, you're ill. It was like the biggest relief. I just thought I was a disgusting monster, basically. And he said, right, I want you to go to see your doctor. He gave me a letter. I knew today was going to be like this, by the way. So it's going to be a lot of crying. It's Davina. She's going to get it all out of me. I know she is. And he gave me a letter to see my doctor, and I took it to my doctor. And the doctor said, are you anorexic? And I said, no. He said, are you making yourself sick? Are you bulimic? I said, no. And he went, you can't go. Oh. And I was terrified again. And
so he was saying you could go to treatment if you get approval
from... If I was anorexic or bulimic, but not from... He said, we're going to put you on a diet. And I was that's not going to help. I'm trying to be on a diet. Because every day I would wake up and think, right, I'm not going to eat today.
Yes.
That was my solution. And then obviously I'd crack. And then once I'd eaten one thing, I couldn't stop. So I would spend days locked in the house because I didn't want anyone to see me. And I was getting fatter and fatter and bigger and bigger. My body felt literally like it belonged to somebody else more and more. And then I went back to Dr. Lefevre and they said the NHS can't afford it. And he said, well, I'm going to send you anyway. And I said, I haven't got the money. And he said, you don't have to pay me. And he let me go for like 2.5 months. He sent me into residential care. And that man saved my life. And I've said it before, but he literally saved my life because I think I was definitely having suicidal ideation. I was having very dark thoughts because I didn't know. I was just...
How long was this after Sean had died?
I think it crept up on me. And it sort of gradually got worse and worse. But I suppose probably within the year.
And it was a trigger basically for a lot of other things as well.
It triggered all of the feelings of self-loathing from being a child. And it all coalesced into this snowball, this absolute snowstorm of self-revulsion and self-rejection and painful, slow self-destruction.
Were you scared of getting better?
Sometimes there's a comfort. Getting better meant.
Right.
And I was scared of letting go of food.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant.
Yes. I was scared of what a world looked like without having those things to fall back on, like having that to fall back on. I mean, there was alcohol and there were drugs around that as well, but those things have never been an issue to me. I could pick them up, put them down, take them or leave them, but it was always the distorted relationship with food that had the capacity to become really, really bad. And it's weird because it's also my art.
But I was going to say that. So you went to treatment and he did help you.
Oh, I mean, it saved my life. It completely changed my life.
How did that happen?
What happened
2 months?
Was in treatment, I understood what had happened to me previously.
Right.
Like for the first time ever, I met a therapist, and I'd never spoken to a therapist, and a psychotherapist. I get mixed up with types of therapists. I think she was a psychotherapist. And she said to me, well, I'm not surprised you're angry. And I was like, I'm allowed to be angry? She went, of course you're angry. She said, you told me your life story. I understand that the racism you dealt with, how you internalized it, the rejection that you felt socially, all the different things you dealt with. Of course you're turning that in on yourself. It's absolutely normal. And I was like, what? This was completely revelatory to me. I'd never heard these ideas, heard these thoughts, heard these ideas. So I was like, right.
And especially for a woman.
Yes. And I was like, right, so the fury that I feel every single day that I turn in on myself is healthy to feel, but I shouldn't be turning it in on myself. And I have to find a language for it. So they gave me tools to express my feelings and my emotions and to navigate the world. And I'd never really had those tools before. I didn't know how to say, this is what I feel like, this is what I don't want, this is how to draw, to draw boundaries for myself, to choose things for myself. I always felt that life was hurtling towards me at a great speed, and I was trying to not die. That's what it felt like. I was just like, whoa, like, sort of ducking and diving, trying not to get knocked out by the next cataclysmic, massive thing that was hurtling towards me. So suddenly I was given control of the reins to my own life, and I could stop the horses when I wanted to, get off the carriage, have a sip of water, get back on and have a little trot. I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. It was revelatory to me. You know, people are often, when I talk to people now, they say, God, you're so brave emotionally. I'm like, I have to be, because I know what happens when I'm not. I have to say no to you, and I have to tell you what I'm feeling like in this moment, because if I don't, it turns in on me. And I know what happens when it turns in on me. I get really ill, and then I start damaging myself, and I'm not prepared to do that. I don't want to live like that. And so because I don't want to live like that, I am very emotionally honest, because that's healthy. That's what healthy looks like to me.
I think what's fascinating is that the thing that was killing you was, like you said, your art. Like it was the thing that gives you also the greatest joy. So how do you...
I love to cook. Because
how do you But how do you Well, I mean,
because
that seems like so hard. It would be a bit like the thing you love. For me, the thing that I love doing would be doing something artistic with heroin. But I have to stop it. But I don't know how I would do that. How would do it.
I think it's because the thing with cooking and the thing with food, it has many faces. Heroin doesn't really have many faces.
No, I mean, that was a stupid thing to say.
No,
because
no,
obviously
no,
but I'm trying to say I was addicted to that.
No, but I've had this conversation with quite a lot of other addicted people. I was going to say addicts. I've had this conversation, and I think it's a valid point. I think it's a really interesting point. And the conclusion I've come to, because it is like having a little bit of the thing all the time that actually tried to kill you, or that you tried to kill yourself with, is that food has this other face. And that face is a nurturing, beautiful, nourishing face. Heroin doesn't have that.
No.
Neither does alcohol.
No.
Neither does cocaine.
No.
Neither does whatever other drugs. They don't have another side to them. Food has another side to it. And the other side of that face is a beautiful, powerful, unifying, wonderful, like life-giving force. So you can take that thing and walk to the other side of the river. And on the other side, on the other riverbank, is beauty and nourishment and joy and life. And that's what I've done. I've crossed the river to the other side. And I think that's what the place that food held for me before it became dark and twisty and weird and horrible. You know, when I grew up, cooking was a beautiful thing for me. I learned to cook when I was really, really young, and I would cook at home on a Sunday and listen to like Sam Cooke. And, you know, my dad used to be not bipolar on a Sunday or something. I don't know. Sundays were something that made him really happy. And he had a beautiful singing voice, my dad. He would walk around the house singing Sam Cooke and Otis Redding.
So he was musical?
Yeah. A lot of my family are, but actually from my mum's side.
Wow.
My uncle's a jazz guitar player.
Wow.
And yeah. There loads of people played piano, saxophone, singers, writers. You know, the Cane Masons are my cousins, those classical musicians. They're my cousins, you know. Their dad's a piano player. So music does run in our family.
I also feel like when I was hanging out with you before Sean died, food was always part.
Always.
You know, it was always on the menu.
You
like
guys
it
were coming round.
Yeah.
Nana would be cooking for
very
everybody.
social,
very connecting, and very, I think for me, helped me understand my heritage, my culture, who I am. Food to me is a window, it's a portal into self-understanding. You know, what we cook, how we cook, why we cook it, how these ingredients end up on the plate. Learning to put good things into your body, learning to love your body, you have to understand food and you have to love food, I think.
I mean, going from a suicidal ideation when you were in that really dark place and then going to treatment, after that, while you were in treatment, did you think, okay, this is where I want to go? Or did you leave and just step out, go, right, who am I? Like the epitome of beginning again.
I think I've stepped out and said, right, who am I? Because they were a bit like, the one thing about it, they were a bit like, you're an alcoholic and I was like, really not, you know, I don't really care about alcohol. I was like, I can put it down. I barely drink these days. I'll have a drink sometimes, but it's never driven my life in that kind of way. So I had to kind of work out for myself the bits to keep.
Yes.
That made sense for me. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's true for lots of people. But I had to come out and work out who I was. And it took a while. It took a while to kind of rebalance myself. But pivoting has always felt quite natural to me to just start the next thing again. And I think I after that, I was working at the Lighthouse for a bit, at the London Lighthouse, which was just off Ladbroke Grove, and it was an HIV/AIDS hospice. And I started volunteering there. I used to do the Women's Day on a Friday, Women's and Family Day on a Friday. We just used to sing songs and hang out and just do nice things. So it was like a sort of just giving support emotionally and socially to people who were dealing with HIV and AIDS. And when I was working there, and that place was brilliant. God, it was amazing. I don't think it's there anymore.
Why?
But why was it brilliant? It gave me perspective on life.
Yeah.
You know, there were people dealing with their own mortality. People with young children understand that they weren't going to live to see their children grow older, because this was back when medication wasn't as it is now. Or, you know, dealing with that they may not grow up to see with their children. People dealing with immediate sickness and, you know, faced with their own mortality, still living these full, brave, brilliant lives, you know. And I realised that I was not ready to give up, and I was not ready to go under, and that there were ways through, you know. Having come out of treatment, I had all these new tools, and I was working there. And somebody there said to me one day, they worked at GLR, which was Greater London Radio, which was the BBC local radio in London. And they said, do you want to do a show at GLR? And I was like, what's that? And they said, do you want to do a radio show Sunday nights? Do you want to come do it? And I said, yeah, all right. I didn't really know what it meant. Again, I had no idea what they meant. And I went and I met the head of GLR, and we sort of had a chat. And she went, you'll be great. Do you want to do it? And I said, sure. That Sunday, I started doing a live radio show.
But I bet you were an absolute natural.
Yeah, I loved it.
And they knew you were going to be.
How do you do it? What button? That one? Sure. And I just was like driving the thing, and I was just playing tunes and interviewing people. Would come along, different music, you know, artists. I think the first interview I did was with Neneh, of course. And I had to keep remembering it wasn't just us in the kitchen chatting.
Well, I feel a bit like that now, to be fair. So
you have to remember other people listening. Right?
I've got to ask questions. Hold on.
Yeah. And but it was wonderful, and it gave me a real basis and a love for broadcasting. I suddenly thought, I really like this. I love doing this, actually, because it was another string to my bow and another facet. I feel like you're the same, Davina, in that they're all sort of transferable skill sets. The thing that's always made you brilliant, you know, when you were running London clubs and the club scene, doing it in the way, beautiful way you did, was because you're an incredibly natural communicator, you know, and that's what makes you a really good interviewer, and it makes you a really good broadcaster, and it makes you good at the things that you do. The same things that made me a good performer. You sing, you know, great singing. All of those things, it's a kind of movable feast. You can apply it in many different ways. You can apply it to writing. You can apply it to broadcasting. You can apply it to singing. I apply the same thing in the kitchen. I did a dinner the other night with a chef called Api Shashidara at a place called Pally Hill in Mayfair. And we were on the pass. I was thinking, this is like an amazing gig. I was like, I haven't been on the pass for ages. I was loving it. Food was coming out, room full of people, beautiful lights. The food looked gorgeous. We did an Indo-Carib kind of beautiful marriage of dishes, and we'd written all these new recipes together. The teams were back behind us. It was just fabulous, you know. And I thought, this is the feeling I get when I'm on stage. It's the same. It comes from the same truth, the same heart, I think. And to do it right, these things should come from the same heart, I think.
And so after GLR, how did you get back into food?
I think me and Neneh had just been cooking at home, doing a few things, and I met a brilliant woman called Sam Richards, who was my first sort of agent. And I did a couple of other things, and then she said, I think you and Neneh should do a cooking show. And I was like, oh. And then I was like, really? And we went and talked to the BBC a bit, and they were like, you do it. So they gave us the opportunity to do this show. Andi and Neneh, no, what was it called? Neneh and Andi Dish It Up. And we did one series of it. We had a ball. We had the most incredible time. Just us cooking art. And it was quite funny for us, of course, because obviously neither of us are trained in any way whatsoever.
But that's what's so great.
Yeah, and we had to like try and understand how to communicate our recipes to other people, because we cooked a bit like, pass me that thing, throw a bit in there, do a bit in there, yeah, a bit more, yeah, stop. That's how we always cooked, you know. So to try and actually quantify that for other people was something of a challenge. So we did that. And then after we did that series, I started doing sort of supper clubs. And it became more of an expression of my artistic desire to communicate with other people. That's kind of how I see being in the kitchen and how I see cooking, really. It's like it's an expression of the same things that I was expressing when I was writing songs and performing. It's like the things that there aren't always words for, the bits of me that I don't always talk about, the quieter, more still things that you also want to share with another person without necessarily having to tell them about it. You know, you give somebody something that you've made for them. That's an expression of love without having to wang on about it. You know, it's like a quiet gift from one heart to another. So do I. I love to cook. Cooking is a joyful, but it's beyond that. It kind of makes me tingle, and it makes me, like the other day when I did the thing with Avi that I was talking about, the dinner that I was just talking about, I had tears in my eyes. Yeah. Because it made me so happy. Like the faces of the people in the restaurant were so, like, they were flushed with like the happiness of the food, and I could see them savoring every bite, and the things that we had created was affecting them physically and emotionally and spiritually. And that, it's like, it's the best thing in the world to know that you've been felt, you've been heard.
I wonder whether culturally, you being Antiguan, like it's in your blood, and I quickly want to talk about, because one of the weirdest things, one of the maddest things for me ever was, I remember waking up in my bed. I think I was living in Chiswick. I turn on the telly and Miquita's on the telly.
You're like,
and I'm like, what? That's, hang on a minute. What?
School.
What is going on? What? But so Miquita carves an amazing career out for herself. And I loved, you know, Miquita was kind of really full of great spirit and energy and fun, but has like just developed into the just most amazing adult. I've watched her grow up on television. Yeah. It's been beautiful. Yeah. But you two coming together to work together, I love it, with food and culture at the heart of it, is one of the most moving things. And I'm pretty sure it's not just because I love you both. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's because there's something magic that happens. Can we just talk about the iPlayer trip? Oh, by the way, BBC, if you're watching, you put it back on the iPlayer and keep it there. Stop taking it off and putting it back on again. It's not okay, because the world needs it. Yeah. And I keep wanting to tell people about it and saying you should go and watch it. We can't find it anywhere.
I know it's quite frustrating, that, because you're talking about the Caribbean. So,
yes.
Yeah. So the Caribbean, Andi and Miquita in the Caribbean was, to me, one of the things I'm most proud of in my whole life. It was quite an extraordinary trip that we did together. We went to Antigua, Barbuda and Barbados.
And will you just explain, how old was Miquita at this point?
I guess it was about, she's 40 now, so she was probably 37.
And she'd
been to Antigua, but she went to Antigua when she was 12 or 13. Our friend Amanda, Amanda Meading, took us to Antigua as a birthday present for Miquita. Such a gorgeous, generous, amazing thing. Rented a house, flew us out there, me, her, Charlie Condu, and the girls went on this incredible holiday to Antigua. Miquita spent half of it on the beach like Gloria Swanson in a bloody dressing gown with a towel around her head, going, oh, it's so hot, oh God, we're going in the ocean again, oh my God, like nightmare teenager, basically. And I wanted her to have this like spiritual, amazing, and she just would not.
She wasn't ready.
Refused. No, just a teenager, want to be with their mates, whatever. And which is fine. But I was really upset about it at the time. I was like, oh my God, you're so annoying. Anyway, so we got to go back. And I was like, I really want her to feel it this time. And boy, did she feel it.
Watching Miquita, like, during that series was one of the most moving things I've ever seen. I sobbed.
It was
whole
deep.
way through. But for you too, to share that with your child when it's been really important to you.
Yes, it was huge.
But to watch the penny drop.
Yeah.
And
her blackness,
Oh!
her Antiguan heritage,
Yeah.
her Caribbean nature. And there were so many things about her. So she was like, oh, that's really, I'm like, yeah, because you black. You know what I mean? It was really like her understanding fully how her heritage resides within her.
The other thing I thought that really was profound for me to hear was that being mixed race or mixed heritage means that, you know, she'd kind of had one foot in one world, one foot in the other, but that at school she'd kind of wished like, I just want to be white.
Yeah, because it seemed easier.
When she said that,
I
was like, wow.
Yeah.
And for you to kind of sense that in your child.
It's really heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking because it's like really what they were doing is throwing you away, you know.
But to be with her, well, she's experiencing this wake up.
It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And she'd already gone through some of it, I guess, before that. But it was like the deep soul penny really dropped in.
We
her.
felt it.
And, you know, it affected our relationship deeply. It affected our relationship to the Caribbean deeply. It's affected our relationship to the idea of being in Africa deeply.
How has it affected your relationship with Miquita?
I think that it's brought us even closer together, traveling together and learning things, not just about our heritage, but ideas about... When you learn about yourself, it helps you learn about the world. The more you know about yourself, the more... Because people often say, well, what difference does it make? What's the point of it? The more you learn about yourself and where you come from, the more you understand the movement of peoples, the more you understand migration, like voluntary or not, forced or not.
I mean, culturally, I think knowing exactly where you come from is incredibly valuable. I think one of the things that, like, makes you so attractive is your fire. For life, for love, for and you love with your whole heart. Like you give everything. It's so attractive to be around. You are so attractive to be around. And I guess like to round up your life story, we've got to talk about this crazy stepping stone to like primetime TV. So I've seen Miquita on TV because for me, you're, you know, fuck Jenny from the block. You're Andi from the block. Like Jenny was never on the block. She wasn't on the block. You were on the block.
I was on the block.
You were on the block. You were the block. and I just was like, wait, how old were you when you got Great British Menu?
50. What is it now? What am I now? 60. So 54 or something.
Can I just like, you know, like mega presenting major primetime TV show that everybody loves is absolutely massive.
It is.
At 54, this is what I love about you. You are a walking advert for like everything is possible.
And, you know, it's interesting. When I was really young, right, I used to say to people, I don't care about age. Doesn't mean anything to me. Because I always had friends who were quite a lot older than me when I was really young.
Yeah.
And I now have friends who are quite a lot younger than me.
Me too.
Just have friends. I just always have friends. I don't care how old you are. If I like you, I like you. When you're young and you say that, people believe you. When you're older and you say that, people go, sure.
Yeah, whatever.
They think you're saying it because you just want to hang around with a bunch of young people. It's like, no, I just don't. It's just never really been of interest to me. What's interesting to me is the content of your character. I don't really give a shit about whether you're 24 or if you're 64. I just want to know what's in your heart. That's all that really interests me about a person. So no one was more surprised than me, Davina, when all this stuff started.
Were you?
Well, sort of. Yeah. I mean,
really, I wasn't.
When I got a call from Great British Menu. I was running. We had a pub in Homerton. Perfectly happy, working, toiling away. 120 covers on a Sunday. You know,
wow,
all of that, and you know, writing my menus, going down the market, having a great time with myself. I was loving it. You know, cooking for people. making up new things, cooking, like Garfield, my partner.
We haven't talked about Garfield. We love Garfield. We love Garfield. Garfield is great.
He is great.
No, how long have you guys been together?
30 years.
Can I just say big ups? 30 years. And he's been trying to marry you this entire time.
He's been trying to marry this entire time.
You're not having it.
Eventually have to marry him, just for legal reasons.
But also for the party.
For the party, for everybody else, because people will not shut up about it. I'm like, oh my God, I might just
I'll lose my shit if you two get married.
I think we might have to.
Yeah.
Because, well, just also legally.
Yes.
With one of us dies.
Yes,
when
of
one
course.
of us dies, all of that stuff. That
anyway, love you, Garfield.
Love you, Garfield. I do love you.
I love him as well.
I don't like the idea of marriage.
That's okay.
Anyway. There I am, pootling around in the Jack Lawrence Star in Homerton, I get a phone call. Well, let me tell you this, you'll like this. I was riding my bike 2 weeks before. I used to ride my bike around Hackney Marshes for exercise. And I was riding my bike, I was thinking, something's happening. I feel really fucking fantastic. I was riding the bike and I came back and Miquita with Garfield were there and I went, something's happened. This is what I said, I don't know, but the stars have aligned. I'm telling you, there's been a fucking shift. I can feel it.
You know.
Yeah. And they were like, okay, crazy. What are you on about? I was like, just watch me. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call going, will you come and have lunch with this brilliant guy called Tom, he was executive producer of Great British Menu, and I'd done one job with him months and like 2 years before, and I did an audition for something, and then they gave it to that guy that makes pasta sauce. He's got several names. I can't remember his name.
Oh yes,
he used to do MasterChef. That dude.
Yes, I remember him.
Whatever his name is. Not Lawrence Llewellyn, the other one.
Lloyd Grossman.
Lloyd Grossman.
Yeah.
He doesn't have three names. He just.
Can I just say something? I remembered.
Well done. I was like, look, yeah, that dude. And they gave it to him, this judging thing on some show that didn't last very long. But anyway, I had met Tom on that show and we'd got on really, really well. Cut to 2 years later, he's executive producer of Great British Menu. And he's like, we need Andy. So they called me and I said, oh, hi. And they said, will you come and have lunch with us? Will you come and be a guest judge? And I thought, seems like a lot to be a guest judge. Why they could buy me lunch? Anyway, I go and I sit down. They went, it's not guest judge. Prue Leith is leaving. Would you like to take her place? And I said, excuse me? Do you just offer me Prue Leith's job? I mean, I literally was pootling around in Hackney in the pub, And they said, yeah, do you want to do it? And I was like, yes. I did think about it for a second. I was thinking, can I do that? I thought, of course you can. Yes. So then I went and I met the dude from the BBC and stuff. And we had to go on like an audition dinner. We went to a Jason Atherton restaurant and we had dinner. And they asked me what I thought about the dinner. And I told them in detail what I thought about the dinner. Amazing. Got 7, by the way, Jason. Fennel was raw. Don't like raw fennel. And we did that. And then literally a week later, they offered me the job. And I said yes. And then I was with Oliver Payton, who we both know.
Oh my God, it's so funny.
Well. How mad is that?
So funny. I messaged him the other day.
Did you?
Yeah.
I love Oliver.
Yeah, I love Oliver.
I love Oliver. I have to say, Matthew Fort and Oliver Payton, when I got to Great British Menu, were amazing.
Really?
They were so welcoming. Because it was a bit intimidating.
Yeah, it's quite scary, right?
It's a big show and it's very beloved.
Yes.
And Prue is Prue.
Yes.
God damn
yeah.
it, please.
Yeah.
No one knew who the hell I was. Do you know what I mean? Some chick from the pub in Homerton.
I think you were quite well known at that point.
Not at that level.
No, okay.
Not in the world of culinary excellence. I was quite well known for other things. Somebody said to me the other day, you were the most famous person who wasn't famous that I knew for years. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I think maybe I felt like that about you.
So I was well known,
yes,
but not famous. And certainly not for that, particularly for cooking, but not for, that kind of fine eye for detail and all that sort of stuff. So it was a little bit intimidating. And they were just incredible. They were just absolutely lovely, just so sweet and kind and made space for me.
Yes.
They didn't have to do it in that way, do you know what I mean? They could have just gone and been a little bit minty about the whole thing, you know what I mean? And they made real space for me and were like, well, tell us what you think. What do you think about this dish and why do you think that? And really, but just really elicited ideas,
made you feel safe.
Thoughts to me, made me feel safe enough to give them my honest thoughts, opinions and stuff. So very quickly, I felt very much at home. And then after 2 years of being a judge, they offered me...
Amazing.
They said, would you like to host it? And I said, absolutely. And I'm really glad I did.
Oh, my God. I mean, Andy, it's like Watching you, I've known you for so long. And watching your career has been one of the greatest joys of my life.
Oh.
But, you know, obviously you were a natural choice for this podcast because of all the times you've picked yourself up.
Yeah.
You've dusted yourself off.
Start all over again.
And you've started all over again. And pivots and saying yes, even when you're scared.
Yes.
And all the learnings.
Yes.
And
I think that not allowing fear to be the thing that stops you from doing things is very important. You know what I mean? And I was like, do it. Even if it terrifies you, do it. And I think that has always been my go-to position. Even if it terrifies you, do it. In fact, the more it terrifies you, possibly the more you should do it.
I wonder, having heard your story, whether that really terrified girl who came back to Bury St Edmunds, who lived in abject terror every single day, was in training for you, doing everything that terrifies you.
I think a bit.
And that you got through it.
Yeah. I think knowing that I could survive that means that I know that this too shall pass. And also, it's an opportunity. Take the opportunity, because you know what? It won't kill you. I might fall on my ass, but it doesn't matter. You'll get back up again. You fall on your ass, you'll be a bit bruised, get some cocoa butter, rub it in, have a cup of tea and get back up and get on with it. That's kind of how I think about it. It's like failing is not the worst thing in the world. Not reaching the thing that you think you wanted to reach is not the worst thing in the world. You know, when people talk about, someone said this to me, I read something the other day about, you know, Apollo 13 or, you know, an inventor, like they were inventing something. When they finally get to the prototype that works, they've had 200 before that didn't work. You don't just invent the vacuum cleaner overnight. You don't just invent a rocket ship overnight. Stuff has to fuck up quite royally. Things have to go wrong quite badly, but you keep going at it until you get it right. And then when you get it right, it's even more satisfying. It's all right if you don't get it right. I think that's a really big lesson, actually. And that's something I would like to impart, actually. If there's one thing I want to say with this in this conversation, it's like, it doesn't matter if it doesn't work out. You will get up again, have a little rest, have a cup of tea, and then work out what you want to do next. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't really matter what other people think either. P.S. Because nobody knows who you are except you. No one can tell you who you are except yourself. No one can define you except yourself. And so other people's idea of your success or failure are not my business. Are they? No. They're not, though.
No, I agree.
You're like that.
What other people think of me is none of my business is something that somebody taught me once, and I was like, that is true. And absolutely true.
You know, I want people to like me. Obviously, I'm a human being, but if they don't, it's not the end of the world.
I'm getting worse and worse with that as I get older.
God.
I'm like,
I wear hearing aids now. I take them off out at 7 o'clock. So I'm done. I'm like, I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Andi Oliver, I could have gone on for another 4 hours. This is the problem. We'll have to come back for part 2.
I mean, we might have to. There's more for us to talk about. I think that life is good. Bite it in the arse. Do something that scares you every day, even if it's just a little bit. Even if it's just a tiny little bit. That's what I think.
And learn from every mistake.
Yeah.
There's a learning, isn't there?
All right.
And every big traumatic experience has learning.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes a minute.
Yeah.
To work out what you're
or years.
Yes.
But you'll get there.
Yeah. Eventually you'll go,
there.
Oh, right.
Can we just give Andi Oliver a round of applause, everybody, back there?
I mean, there's people out there.
You forget, right? Who would you say was like one of your most positive influences? British,
Fluella Benjamin.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there.
Right, okay.
Because we've got something for you. It's for you. Feel free to read it out loud to us. Is it really a good one?
Yes. Oh, it's from Fluella. Oh, stop it. She's always making me cry.
Read it.
Dear, God, Davina.
Sorry.
Dearest darling Andi, you were one of my special play school babies that I'm so proud of. Yes, I watch you with enormous pride and admiration as you continue to flourish and spread your infectious, unique personality across the nation. Creating joy and happiness everywhere you go, inspiring others to discover their full potential by being an intrepid, unstoppable, stylish role model. You have your own special way of connecting and creating excitement and laying the path of enlightenment which others can follow.
Yes.
I love you for that and for making a difference by changing attitudes and perception.
Yes.
Here's looking at you, my darling, rising higher and higher through the round window, sending virtual hugs full of love, joy and happiness. Fluella, your play school auntie. Why are you trying to kill me?
But how lovely is that?
Oh my God.
Isn't that amazing? And you know what?
She was
Can I say something? In five years' time, you'll be writing a letter for someone like that who will say that you were her role model. Honestly, that's the joy of life and being such a positive.
Without Fluella, there would be no me.
Yeah.
Like, on her shoulders, I stand, like, literally. In the world of broadcasting, it's like, there was nobody else that looked like her. Can you imagine what she went through?
Oh, yeah, right. And she was so brilliant for all of us.
Did you
as well?
Message her?
Yeah.
Oh, Davina.
It was our team, to be fair. I've got to give them credit. Our team here are absolutely amazing, and they'd seen you speak about her.
Talk about her because I love her so much. I really am like... Because also what she does this thing, she does what she does on screen and what she did on screen and what she still continues to do. But she also does this, what Lem Sisse calls the work you do when no one is watching.
Yes.
And she's an incredible day in, day out, 24/7 advocate for young people. The work she does in the House of Lords as a dame.
Yeah, she's really impressive, isn't she?
She's really impressive. She's incredibly important. And I think that she just gets up every day and cracks on with it. And, you know, this is what we're talking about. It's like, just keep going.
I mean, what is not to love about this woman? There's an energy to Andi that is so infectious and gorgeous to be around. But the way that she has navigated through life in such a positive way, even when it has thrown its very worst at her, she has picked it up and turned it into a positive and dusted herself off and gone on. And for a woman to get to 53, 54 and become a presenter of a primetime TV show, you know, having kind of dabbled in media before that, but really huge job. I love everything about what Andi stands for, who she is as a person, and literally the glow that she has in her soul.